The late summer sun painted soft golden streaks across the neighborhood of Richmond Heights, a close-knit community nestled just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Jasmine Walker moved steadily along the familiar streets, a sense of quiet assurance in every step she took. At 37, Jasmine carried the poise of someone who had faced challenges most couldn't imagine. Her dark eyes a testament to both strength and resilience. She wasn't dressed in her usual army fatigues. Instead, she wore a simple black t-shirt, faded jeans, and worn sneakers, blending effortlessly into the everyday crowd. 7 years had passed since she last walked this street. 7 years of overseas deployment, dangerous missions, and losses that had quietly reshaped her soul. As she walked past the familiar storefronts, the old corner bakery that still served peach cobbler, the community center now freshly painted, nostalgia tugged gently at her heart. It felt surreal how much things had changed and yet remained exactly the same. She adjusted the small duffel bag slung casually over her shoulder, feeling the weight of personal memories rather than belongings. Her posture, however, betrayed her military background. Shoulders squared, chin up. Once a soldier, always a soldier, her father used to say. The thought made her smile faintly, a brief warmth piercing her careful demeanor. A group of teenagers stood outside Jay's barbershop, laughing loudly. One boy, no older than 17, glanced up as Jasmine passed by. His gaze lingered a moment, curious. "Hey, miss," he called out, intrigued. "You military or something?" She paused slightly, regarding him with a subtle warmth. "Something like that." He smiled back, nodding respectfully, recognizing a soldier's bearing without needing a uniform. "Thought so. My brother's army too. He walks just like that." Jasmine offered a faint, appreciative smile, nodding before continuing her walk. Moments like these reaffirmed her choice to serve, to protect communities just like this one, even if the battles at home sometimes felt harder than those abroad. Lost briefly in thought, Jasmine barely registered the police cruiser approaching until its tires crunched conspicuously on the gravel beside her. It moved slowly, deliberately matching her pace. Her pulse quickened, senses sharpening instinctively. She had been through this before, not on foreign soil, but here at home. "Excuse me," the officer inside called out, the tone curt, authoritative. She stopped, turning slowly. Officer Brian Mitchell leaned slightly from the driver's side window, his expression masked behind mirrored sunglasses. Mitchell, a middle-aged officer known locally for his rigid approach, appraised her carefully. "Can I help you?" she asked evenly, voice neutral, betraying no emotion. He studied her closely, his jaw set firmly. "We got a few calls, suspicious activity nearby. Mind explaining why you're walking around here?" Jasmine looked around deliberately, taking in the peaceful, almost sleepy street. "I grew up here, didn't know walking was suspicious now." Mitchell's lips tightened slightly. "Just routine questions. Got ID?" Her breath steadied as she felt the familiar sting of indignation. This wasn't routine, at least not for everyone. She had seen this kind of routine too often. She remained calm, but her voice held a quiet edge. "Do you ask everyone who walks here for their ID?" Mitchell frowned visibly. "I'm just doing my job." Jasmine slowly reached into her pocket, pulling out her military identification, clearly marked. She held it up, not handing it over yet. "Here. Lieutenant Jasmine Walker, U.S. Army Rangers." Mitchell's eyes narrowed skeptically. "Army Rangers, huh? You expect me to just believe that?" "I expect you to respect it," she countered, steadily holding his gaze. He extended his hand, silently demanding the ID. Reluctantly, Jasmine handed it to him. Mitchell studied it longer than necessary, as though trying to detect something fraudulent. The pause was intentional, the silence heavy and insulting. Finally, he looked back up, his tone mocking, edged with disbelief. "Army Ranger. Impressive. Or is this a fake?" Jasmine stood motionless, her expression unflinching. "You can verify it. But then again, that's not what this is about, is it?" Mitchell's face hardened slightly. "Careful with your tone. People nearby had started noticing. Jasmine could feel their curious gazes, some concerned, some simply watching the spectacle unfold. She knew this wasn't just about her. It was about power, authority, and who had the right to claim space on these familiar streets. She stood quietly, awaiting his next move. Mitchell's hand edged toward the latch of his holster, the gesture subtle but deliberate, a message of intimidation. Jasmine recognized this for what it was, a dangerous dance, one she had no intention of backing down from. A crowd began forming subtly, smartphones quietly raised, silently preparing to witness what might happen next. And Jasmine knew instinctively, this confrontation was far from over. The air seemed to thicken as Jasmine stood calmly, her gaze fixed firmly on Officer Mitchell. She knew exactly how situations like this unfolded. Small provocations, calculated reactions, and then suddenly someone found themselves in handcuffs, dignity stripped in front of their own community. She vowed silently that today would not be one of those days. "Listen," Mitchell began, voice low but edged with irritation, clearly unhappy about the growing attention from bystanders. "I asked you a simple question. I suggest you start cooperating." Jasmine's expression didn't change. She kept her breathing even, measuring each word carefully. "I've answered every question you've asked." Mitchell shook his head slowly, clearly not satisfied. "Let's try again. Where exactly were you headed?" "Home," she answered simply. "2 blocks down." Mitchell glanced again at her military ID as if still struggling to accept its authenticity. "If you're military, why aren't you in uniform?" "I wasn't aware there was a dress code for walking down the street," Jasmine responded calmly, her tone polite but firm. He exhaled sharply, clearly annoyed. "Listen, the attitude isn't helping." By now, a sizable group had formed around them, their quiet murmurs spreading tension through the street. A young woman began filming openly, her smartphone held steadily in front of her, making no attempt to hide her presence. "Attitude?" Jasmine questioned gently, raising an eyebrow. "I've been respectful from the moment you stopped me." Mitchell stepped out of the patrol car, moving closer in an attempt to assert his authority physically. Jasmine recognized the tactic. She'd encountered it in various forms over her military career. A physical closeness meant to intimidate. But she stood her ground, shoulders square, meeting his gaze without fear. "I don't appreciate having my time wasted," Mitchell stated sharply, stepping closer still. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Jasmine didn't move an inch. "Am I under arrest?" "You are if you keep this up," he snapped. "For what crime?" she challenged, voice clear enough for everyone around to hear. "Walking? Talking back?" The woman filming took a step forward, confidence rising. "We're all watching you, officer," she called out firmly. "She hasn't done anything wrong." Mitchell threw a glance at the crowd, agitation visibly mounting. The power dynamic was shifting, and he felt it slipping out of his grasp. He turned back to Jasmine, eyes narrowing. "I won't ask you again," he warned. Jasmine's instincts flared, senses sharpening, assessing every detail. His posture, the positioning of his hands, the distance between them. She had faced more dangerous scenarios, enemies armed with lethal intent. Officer Mitchell, by comparison, was predictable. Yet she also understood clearly the risks she faced if this escalated. "If you put your hands on me, you'll be making a mistake," she stated calmly, clearly, each word resonating in the silence. Mitchell hesitated slightly, sensing something deeper in her warning, but refusing to back down publicly. Pride was a dangerous thing, and Jasmine could see that he was now driven more by ego than duty. He reached for her wrist, intending to forcibly cuff her. Jasmine responded swiftly but with controlled precision. She shifted her arm, fluidly evading his grasp, not aggressively, just a deft move that caused his hand to find nothing but air. The crowd murmured audibly, amazed at how easily she sidestepped him. Mitchell, visibly embarrassed, flushed deep red, anger replacing his earlier irritation. "That's resisting," he barked, stepping closer once more. That was me avoiding unnecessary contact, Jasmine corrected quietly, evenly. You haven't told me what I'm being arrested for. A man from the crowd spoke up clearly, voice carrying over the tension. She's right. You haven't said a single crime. Another voice added, We're recording everything, officer. Mitchell's breathing quickened, anger now fully apparent. He reached for his radio. Dispatch, requesting backup. Suspect resisting arrest. The word sent a ripple through the crowd, disbelief evident on faces around Jasmine. They'd all seen exactly what happened. Jasmine stood unwavering, heart beating steadily. Face calm. I advise you to reconsider your actions. Backup won't change the fact you've overstepped. He ignored her, chest heaving slightly. Turn around, he demanded once more, voice quivering slightly with barely controlled anger. Jasmine held her position, feeling the weight of the community behind her. Her next words were deliberate, resonant. You're losing control, she said softly, yet firmly. Walk away. Mitchell didn't respond. Instead, he lunged forward, aiming to physically subdue her, completely unaware he was about to make the most significant mistake of his career. The instant Officer Mitchell lunged, Jasmine's reflexes took over, swift, precise, instinctual. It wasn't aggression, it was controlled efficiency, the result of countless hours of rigorous training in high-stakes combat scenarios. Without hesitation, she sidestepped his grasp, guiding his momentum gently yet firmly past her. It happened so smoothly, the movement appeared effortless to the crowd watching, as if Mitchell had simply miscalculated and stumbled forward on his own. The officer regained his footing, turning sharply, cheeks flushed bright red with humiliation. Every eye in the growing audience was on him, smartphones capturing every second. Voices murmured in disbelief, astonishment rippling through the gathered neighbors. Did you see that? Someone whispered, incredulous. Jasmine stood perfectly still, her posture calm and dignified, her breathing steady. She hadn't even raised her voice. But the impact of her subtle, precise actions had already reverberated through the street, shifting the balance of power decisively. Mitchell, pride deeply wounded, reacted with raw frustration. You just assaulted an officer, he growled, pointing at her, voice strained with barely suppressed anger. No, Jasmine responded evenly, keeping her eyes level on his. I protected myself from your unwarranted aggression. You crossed the line. The woman with the phone took a step closer, camera still recording. Her voice rang clear and confident. We all saw what happened. You attacked her. She defended herself. You lost. A chorus of murmurs and nods followed. Mitchell's face hardened, jaw clenching so tightly his temples bulged. It wasn't just the embarrassment, it was the realization that he had completely lost control of the situation. His authority, unquestioned moments before, was now openly challenged by an entire neighborhood. From the corner of Jasmine's eye, she noticed a second patrol car pulling up quietly behind Mitchell's vehicle. Sergeant Evelyn Rhodes stepped out, taking in the scene swiftly. Rhodes was older, her demeanor instantly authoritative and controlled. Jasmine watched Rhodes closely, reading her stance, expression, and demeanor to gauge what would happen next. What's going on here? Rhodes asked sharply, her eyes quickly scanning between Mitchell and Jasmine. Her tone left no room for evasion or dishonesty. Mitchell took a shaky breath, trying to steady his voice. She resisted arrest, he started, already losing conviction as the words left his mouth. Rhodes glanced over at Jasmine, who remained completely composed. What were you arresting her for exactly? Mitchell hesitated, visibly uncomfortable under the weight of scrutiny. Suspicious behavior. She refused cooperation. The woman filming immediately cut in, holding her camera steady and unafraid. That's not true. She answered every question. He didn't like her answers, so he got physical. Rhodes turned fully toward Jasmine, who held up her military ID calmly. Lieutenant Jasmine Cole, Navy SEAL. Jasmine introduced herself clearly, her voice carrying quiet dignity. Rhodes' eyes widened in surprise and recognition. Her posture shifted subtly, respect evident in her stance. "Lieutenant Cole," she repeated slowly, processing quickly. "Care to tell me your side?" Jasmine lowered her ID carefully. "I was walking home. Officer Mitchell stopped me without clear cause, demanded identification, then accused me of lying. He became aggressive. I defended myself when he attempted unnecessary force." Rhodes glanced at Mitchell, whose face was pale with anger and embarrassment. "You knew she was military?" Mitchell hesitated, visibly struggling. "I thought—" "You didn't think," Rhodes interrupted sharply. "We'll review the footage, but it's obvious this situation escalated unnecessarily. I was just doing my job," Mitchell muttered defensively. Rhodes shook her head, clearly dissatisfied. "Your job doesn't include harassing civilians or escalating encounters." The crowd grew quiet, sensing that justice was beginning to shift back toward Jasmine's side. Rhodes looked toward Jasmine with sincerity. "Lieutenant, on behalf of our department, I apologize. You shouldn't have been treated this way." Jasmine acknowledged the apology with a nod, but her gaze never softened. "I appreciate your words, Sergeant, but actions speak louder. Officers like Mitchell endanger trust in your uniform." Mitchell flinched, visibly wounded by the direct criticism. Rhodes exhaled slowly, understanding the gravity of Jasmine's words. "I assure you, this incident will be addressed internally, publicly, fully." "Good," Jasmine replied softly, "because people are watching." A murmur of agreement rippled through the gathered crowd. Rhodes knew what that meant. The footage, already online by now, would be viewed by thousands. Accountability wasn't optional, it was imperative. As Rhodes turned to speak quietly to Mitchell, Jasmine exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. She had confronted aggression, protected herself, and stood firm. Yet she felt no joy, only a sense of quiet determination. This wasn't a personal victory. It was a step toward something much larger. The crowd slowly dispersed, voices low but animated. Jasmine could already feel the significance of this moment spreading outward. Today, she hadn't simply defended herself. She had taken a stand, quietly and firmly, reminding everyone present of what true strength looked like. Within hours, footage of the incident flooded social media platforms, quickly transforming from local chatter to national conversation. Clips of Officer Mitchell stumbling after his failed attempt to detain Jasmine played repeatedly across news stations and community forums. Comments poured in, some expressed shock, others anger, but overwhelmingly, the public demanded accountability. Mitchell became the unwanted face of police misconduct overnight. Back at the precinct, Sergeant Rhodes called Mitchell into her office, closing the door with deliberate authority. She stood silent for a moment, studying him across her cluttered desk, files and paperwork, a quiet testament to the responsibility she carried. Mitchell shifted uneasily. The confidence that once defined him had vanished, replaced by defensiveness and an undeniable sense of dread. "Sergeant, Stop." Rhodes's voice was steady, but the sharpness cut through any excuses Mitchell was preparing. "We both know this got completely out of control." Mitchell's eyes darted downward, avoiding her penetrating gaze. "She was uncooperative. I was trying." "You were trying to control her," Rhodes interrupted firmly. "And she didn't let you. That's why this escalated. Not because she posed a threat, but because she challenged your authority." Mitchell swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. "I followed procedure." "No, you didn't," Rhodes snapped, her patience thinning. "Procedure involves assessing actual threats, not creating them. Lieutenant Cole is highly respected, not only in this community, but by the entire nation. You didn't just disrespect her. You embarrassed this department." Mitchell opened his mouth to respond, but seemed to think better of it, falling silent instead. Rhodes leaned back in her chair, her eyes unwavering. "Effective immediately, and you're suspended pending an internal investigation. And honestly, Mitchell, you're lucky it isn't worse." He stood rigid, his fists clenched at his sides. Suspended? He repeated, disbelief coloring his voice. For doing my job? Rhodes exhaled, frustration clear on her face. Your job is to protect and serve this community, not intimidate and harass it. If you still don't understand that, suspension is the least of your worries. Mitchell stared at her, visibly shaken. Rhodes gestured toward the door. Hand in your badge and firearm before you leave. He exited without another word, humiliation etched deeply into his posture. The news of Mitchell's suspension spread swiftly throughout the precinct. Conversations hushed whenever he passed, his fellow officers avoiding eye contact. He became a pariah among colleagues who, while often silent, recognized that he had crossed an unforgivable line. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat quietly at her childhood home, the television on low volume, the evening news cycling through clips of the confrontation. Her phone buzzed continuously, friends, family, former teammates checking in. Most expressed concern, some pride, all respect. Yet Jasmine felt strangely distant from the attention, her mind occupied by deeper questions about the system itself. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Uncle Marcus stepped inside, holding 2 steaming mugs of tea. He handed her one before sitting down slowly beside her, the worn sofa creaking gently. "You all right?" he asked quietly, concern softening his eyes. Jasmine exhaled deeply, her shoulders finally relaxing. "I'm fine. It's just, it shouldn't have come to this. Not here. Not at home." Marcus nodded slowly, sipping his tea. "But it does. Too often. Today, you reminded people there are consequences." She turned to him, uncertainty clear in her expression. "But does it really change anything?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Maybe not everything at once, but every step counts. Every time someone sees strength like yours standing calm in the face of injustice, it shifts something. People remember. And remembering leads to change." Jasmine considered his words carefully. She had confronted enemies overseas, navigated dangerous operations in unforgiving territories, but it was these quiet, domestic battles that felt infinitely harder. It wasn't just about defeating an enemy, it was about shifting deeply entrenched attitudes, changing the very fabric of society. Her phone buzzed again, a notification lighting the screen. She glanced down briefly, seeing a simple, powerful message from a former Navy SEAL teammate. "Proud of you. Keep standing tall." Marcus smiled softly, noticing the subtle lift in her posture. "See? People notice courage, and courage inspires." Jasmine nodded slowly, a newfound resolve settling within her. The battle she'd fought today wasn't about physical strength or military prowess. It was about the quiet resilience to challenge unfairness wherever she found it. She took a sip of her tea, the warmth spreading through her as she reflected deeply. She knew Mitchell would face consequences, though how severe remained uncertain. What mattered now was not just his accountability, but the message her actions sent, about dignity, strength, and the refusal to back down when justice demanded it. Tomorrow would bring more scrutiny, more questions. But Jasmine was ready. She'd stood firm today, and tomorrow she would stand firm again. In the weeks following the confrontation, Jasmine's life settled into an uneasy balance. Her story had resonated deeply, sparking intense discussions in Baton Rouge and beyond. Local news turned into national headlines, forcing uncomfortable but essential conversations about race, authority, and accountability. She received countless messages from strangers, sharing similar experiences. Some were supportive, thanking her for standing up. Others were angry, accusing her of disrespecting law enforcement. Jasmine understood both reactions stemmed from deep places: pain, fear, confusion. Yet beneath it all, she sensed a potential shift, an opening for something better. One morning, as the first light streamed through her kitchen window, Jasmine received an unexpected call. It was Sergeant Rhodes, her tone respectful and professional. "Lieutenant Cole, I'd like to arrange a meeting if you're willing. I think there are important discussions to be had." Jasmine paused, considering her words carefully. "I agree. When? Tomorrow afternoon at the precinct, Rhodes replied, adding softly, if you're comfortable coming here. I'll be there, Jasmine said firmly, recognizing the weight of the invitation. The next day, Jasmine walked through the doors of the Baton Rouge Police Department with quiet confidence. The atmosphere was charged with tension, but Rhodes greeted her warmly, guiding her to a conference room where officers and community leaders had gathered. Among them sat Officer Mitchell, now dressed in civilian clothes, his demeanor subdued. Rhodes opened the meeting, her voice steady. We're here today because recent events demand we confront uncomfortable truths about our department and our relationship with this community. Lieutenant Cole's experience has highlighted an issue we can't ignore. She turned to Jasmine respectfully. Lieutenant, I believe your voice is crucial in helping us understand how we move forward. Jasmine took a deep breath, standing up calmly, her military training evident in her confident posture. I grew up here, walked these streets long before I wore a uniform. I've seen the best and worst of policing firsthand, not just as a SEAL overseas, but as a Black woman in America. This confrontation wasn't an isolated incident. It reflects deeper issues, problems we all know exist, but often choose not to acknowledge. She glanced around the room, eyes resting momentarily on Mitchell, who met her gaze, his expression a mixture of discomfort and cautious openness. I'm not here for vengeance or to cast blame, Jasmine continued steadily. I'm here because I believe we can do better. We must hold ourselves and each other accountable, recognizing that trust isn't given freely, it's earned every single day. A young officer sitting near the back raised his hand tentatively. Jasmine nodded, inviting him to speak. Ma'am, how do we rebuild trust after something like this? Jasmine considered the question carefully, then answered sincerely, it begins with listening, truly hearing the voices in this community, even when they're painful or uncomfortable. It means acknowledging mistakes openly, learning from them, and committing to change, not just in policy, but in culture. Mitchell shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat. Lieutenant Cole, he started, hesitant, eyes focused firmly on the table. I owe you an apology. I handled that situation completely wrong. I let my ego dictate my actions, and it wasn't right. The room went quiet, eyes moving between Jasmine and Mitchell. Jasmine exhaled slowly, measuring her response carefully. I appreciate your willingness to acknowledge that. The question now is whether you and everyone here are ready to learn from this. Mitchell nodded, sincerity evident even beneath his lingering embarrassment. I am, more than you realize. Rhodes intervened, voice firm yet encouraging. Acknowledgement is just the first step. Real change requires sustained action, consistent accountability, and genuine effort from all of us. Jasmine felt a quiet pride in seeing the dialogue unfold. It wasn't easy or comfortable, but it was real and necessary. After the meeting, as Jasmine headed toward the door, Rhodes approached quietly. Thank you, she said sincerely. You didn't have to do this, but your presence here matters. Jasmine nodded slightly, her expression calm but resolute. Change only happens when people step up. Today was just the first step. Outside, the sunlight felt warmer, the air lighter. Jasmine walked slowly down the familiar streets, reflecting deeply on everything that had transpired. Change was slow, hard, sometimes seemingly impossible, but today she'd seen a glimpse of its possibility. As she reached her uncle's porch, Marcus stepped outside, watching her with gentle curiosity. How did it go? He asked softly. She smiled faintly, the weight of the day visible in her eyes but balanced by cautious optimism. It's a start. Marcus chuckled warmly. Every journey begins with one. And remember, Jasmine, you're never walking it alone. She settled onto the porch, breathing in deeply, feeling the promise of progress. Marcus was right, it was only the beginning. But sometimes, that was enough. What is lesson of this story? 1. Stand your ground with dignity. Real strength comes from maintaining your composure and dignity, even when others try to diminish or intimidate you. 2. Change begins with accountability. Lasting transformation in our communities requires acknowledging wrongdoing, confronting uncomfortable truths, and genuinely working toward improvement. 3. Your voice matters. Silence allows injustice to thrive. Every voice speaking up against unfairness can spark powerful change. 4. Strengthen community. True progress happens when individuals unite around shared values, supporting one another through difficult but necessary conversations. 5. Courage is contagious. One act of courage can inspire others, creating a ripple effect that challenges unjust systems and builds a fairer society. What do you think about this story? Let's comment below to discuss them, Beth. And don't forget to subscribe our channel to listen to more interesting stories.